Gotcha.
All right. Eric Vickery, president of Coaching at All Star Dental Academy, with Dr. Michael Goldberg, Practice Perfect Systems, our monthly fireside chat where we talk all things dentistry, just a coaching session with the two of us, talking about what's going on with our clients and how to support those out there. And seeing, I think, is it K-shape? Because we talked about the V-shape recovery, right? It's like, crash and this takeoff. And then now we're also seeing this K-shape thing where it's like some people are growing and they're having these growing pains, and some people are going down. And what does that look like? And so I wanted to ask you about healthy growth, how to grow in a healthy way, because you're going to get to a place you go, I feel like a bubble's going to burst right now. I feel stressed about this. I don't know my next steps because I'm growing so much. So jump in on what your thoughts are on how to handle this growth that we're experiencing.
So, yeah, I think, one of the things that we both see is that when you work with a consultant, you grow. and and sometimes that growth can be supported and sometimes it can't.
Hmm.
And it's all about your foundation and the systems that you build, the support that you have. And what I found is that, and I consider this a failure on my part, is not properly diagnosing the underlying foundational stresses that might be present. And then when you grow and build upon them,
Hmm.
those stresses cause fractures.
Those fault lines. Yeah.
Fractures widen, and
Mm-hmm.
growing gone is not what you want to see.
Yeah. 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 Well, burnout. I mean, we're seeing so many things with burnout and too much work and too many patients booked out too far. As soon as you have a patient, the word gets out in town that have a new patient waiting months and months and months. New patient phone calls are going to stop. So I totally get where you're coming from. You can be a victim of your own success in this situation, and you can have
Absolutely.
good problems, but they're still problems. So what do you see as those foundational systems that we should be looking at?
So there's a great book by, I think it's Marshall Goldsmith. It's up 2007, I think.
Hmm.
What Got You Here Won't Get You There
Hmm.
is the title. And the premise is, and I'm actually going over this now with my students at Temple University, because the skill sets that you need to become a dentist are very different than the skill sets that you need to be a leader.
An entrepreneur. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so the good news is that it's you as the leader,
Hmm.
and you can only change you. You
Mm-hmm.
can't change anybody else, but you can change yourself. So, look in the mirror. What are those things that might have been benefits that might no longer be benefits? So,
Mm.
the
Strengths.
simplest thing
Yeah.
is, you know, in order to succeed and become a dentist, you have to not only be knowledgeable, you have to show it.
Mm.
As a leader, being knowledgeable is important. Showing it off, not so much.
People don't like that.
Right? People don't like that. And we wonder why the average turnover of a dental assistant, 1 to 2 years.
Yeah. 2 years. Yeah. Yeah.
64%. I just saw the statistics. 64% of dental assistants turn over within 2 years.
Man.
And the cost of that.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
The
and this
annual
is
salary.
I think this was before pandemic.
Yeah.
Now with the HR crisis that we have,
Mm.
oh my God, the cost
Of
of
not having someone.
staff turnover,
Yeah.
way more than it used to be.
Mm. Yeah. I think there used to be a 1-to-1 ratio on their annual salary. Now I'm seeing 1 to 1.5 times their annual salary is the cost.
Cost, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just to go back to your moment, you made me reminded me of John Maxwell, who says, he had this young person come up to him and say, who, I want to be a leader. Who should I get to follow me? And he said, we'll start with you. If you're not willing to follow you, nobody else will either. So what do you got to work on yourself? Which means you're constantly working on it. If growth is constant, otherwise it's decline. It's either growth or decline. There's only two choices. If growth is the constant, what are you doing to improve and grow? Because like what you said, what you were doing before isn't going to always get it done now.
It's funny because I'm coaching 2 team members, different practices, one here in New York, actually, one in Washington State. And they're both D's,
Mm-hmm.
which has enabled them to get to where they are.
Yeah.
So they're both leaders within their practices,
Sure.
large practices.
Mm-hmm.
They're both leaders. And what got them to where they are is actually an impediment in many regards to enabling them to fulfill their roles as they are now. Sort of not quite the Peter principle, because they haven't failed. All right. But I'm smartly, the practice leaders I've identified that these people need help. And we don't recognize that very often when we,
Yeah.
I mean, what's the typical trajectory for an office manager? They start out usually as a dental assistant, or maybe a front desk person, or maybe even a hygienist. And they get promoted till eventually they become office manager. Right? What tools did they have as a dental assistant, front desk person, or hygienist that prepares them to be basically a chief operations officer?
Yeah, not much.
So we have, somebody in that trajectory, that pathway, that is now running a $5 million business. With what tools? I don't know if I told you the story. So I got to learn this early on. So it's late 90s, and I'm full-time faculty at the dental school. I'm running one of the faculty practices, and I'm teaching. I'm running the general practice residency program. I'm lots of hats. And the dean comes to me and says, we have this faculty practice in Midtown Manhattan, and it's really losing money. I'd like you to take over running all the faculty practice. I'm like, okay, that's very nice. That's a compliment. Pat me on the back.
Yeah.
Okay. So I said, how about, as I did something smart, I said, how about I do an analysis? Great. So I go and I visit all the practices, and I see what the challenges are. And I go to him, and I wrote out a business plan. And I go to him and I said, the missing link here is you don't have a chief operations officer. You have a bunch of office managers
independent of each other,
who are basically glorified dental office personnel. I said, but you have a $5 million business that should be $10 million, totally underperforming. I said, but I'm trained as a dentist. And yes, I've taught practice management. I understand how to implement clinical things. I said, but you now want me to run a potentially $10 million business. I don't have the business background for that. I need somebody who does. to be a chief operations officer. So he says to me, well, what's that going to cost? So it's the late 90s.
Whatever it should cost.
Well, and I said, well, I think it's going to cost somewhere between $80,000 and $120,000.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks at me. Actually, he didn't. The dental school's chief financial officer.
I was going to say, where's the CFO?
She's right next to him. And Sarah looks at me and she's like, no one here makes that.
Mm.
And I said, well, maybe that tells you something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I had this conversation with one of my clients. How much does somebody like that make?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, as much as you need to spend to get the talents
Mm-hmm.
that you need. Problem is, again, most dentists are dentists. They don't understand the specific talents that are required.
That they're looking for.
So
yeah.
You need managerial talents. You need organizational talents. Patient management, time management, money management. All of those things are skill sets that are required in that position.
Mm-hmm.
Communication, really big.
Mm.
And they don't know how to find it.
Yeah.
And not only that. So the challenge is that there aren't that many people like that
fit that mold. Yeah.
In the dental field.
You got to go outside that realm. I want somebody with experience. I want someone with experience.
And the biggest roadblock is, well, they don't know what I do.
Yeah.
They don't even have the verbiage.
Yeah.
They don't know dental talk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you can teach that.
Mm-hmm.
But getting somebody who knows how to manage money, getting somebody who knows how to manage people, those are skills that are really, really difficult to find.
Yeah. I'm reading First Break All the Rules. It's a Gallup book. Yeah. And in there, they talk about the three. So knowledge, skills, and talent. The first two you can train with IQ and with some ability, but talent, really tough to teach talent. You can't really train talent. You have to have this almost natural foundation that you have this ability to build upon. You're still going to build and fine tune and branch off some things. But for the most part, people have to have a natural ability to win people over or communicate effectively or just have a tendency to want to lead. You get these people who want the title, but they don't want to lead. Or, I mean, so often you get that where they're hungry for the title office manager, but not hungry for living up to the talent that's required to play that role. And I love that you call it the COO, but people, I don't think they understand what they're asking for really when they want that title.
Well, and I don't think the dentist owners understand what is required in it as well. No. So what questions would you ask a potential hire for that position to sort of ascertain what their sort of scores are in those three areas?
Yeah, it's funny because talent is it's an experiential thing. And so probably storytelling, so tell me stories about how you've led in prior situations. Where have you run into some big challenges? How did you navigate those? I love the word how. How questions are great. Tell me, describe, share with me, explain. Get some storytelling going. See what they've been through. That'll tell you if they have some natural talent that you can tap into.
So there are two questions that I ask on every interview. One of them I heard from, I don't know where, which is, if you were to be in any animal, what would it be and why? It gives you a little sort of insight into their personality. The why is really important.
Yep.
So, I have somebody who'll say, well, I want to be a lion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, why?
Mm.
Because they're really protective of their family.
Mm.
Whereas not because I want to be king of the jungle.
Yeah.
If the why is I want to be king of the jungle, that might be a problem. But so I'll get I mean the best answer for a dental assistant position that I ever got, I want to be an octopus
Mm.
because I want to be able to do everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like that.
That's good. Yeah.
The other question I ask is, when you were a child, what board games did you play?
Hmm.
And you'll get people who say, well, I didn't play board games, but I did puzzles.
Mm.
Or, I liked, I like playing with my dollhouse.
Mm.
Or I liked Monopoly or Risk or Stratego
Yeah.
or, Battleship. I mean, so the board games that they like give you an indication of um, competitiveness.
Mm.
So people who don't like board games,
Mm.
who like puzzles,
Mm-hmm.
are people who like doing things. So those can make good financial people,
Mm-hmm.
but
They're
it's
working
not
on their
kind of
own.
they're
Yeah.
working on their own,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
So
I like those.
those are some, sort of from left field questions that people aren't necessarily expecting, but I do love the stories. I love the how questions.
Yeah. I had a doctor, he was like wanting to know their IQ. And instead of having them take an IQ test, and everything, at the end of the interview, he would just throw out of left field. Yeah, just real quick, one last question. What's 10% of 80? You just throw this, just surprise him with this question, and you got some. He would tell these stories. I just get to people 70. Throw out some things. You're like, okay, thank you. Have a great day. I just thought it was interesting.
I again, I think I interview differently for different positions.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to understand what the attitude, aptitude, and skill set,
Mm-hmm.
my three,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
are for each position that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And skill set is the lowest on the rung.
We could train that.
If you have the systems and the time,
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole other
I
topic.
think we're talking about foundation. Yeah. You
Well,
gotta have training as a foundation.
but foundation is what? Foundation are systems,
Mm-hmm.
people,
Yep.
and culture. And culture is basically the interface between systems and people.
Yeah.
So I culture is a big deal.
Yeah.
And and the culture, so that's also one of the keys in hiring is you hire for cultural fit.
Mm-hmm.
That's also something that I
Yeah.
think has been I mean, we're seeing, during the past several years, people have basically hired to fill spots.
Yeah.
Any
We warm body. I just want a warm body,
Yeah,
and then I'm gonna keep looking. I'm gonna find someone else. Yeah.
right. And now we're starting to see the
Repercussions of that.
repercussions of
Yeah.
that.
Yep. I agree. I agree. And what do you do? Do you have the stress of not having enough bodies, or do you have the stress of putting the wrong person in place? I get it. I get the challenge there.
So I get it, but I think you have to measure
Mm.
the fallout.
Mm-hmm.
And the fallout ultimately is in bottom line,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're a business. So you measure the fallout by what's going on. Is your new patient flow, as you mentioned, is it's drying up because people are waiting too long to come in? Are you getting bad reviews? because people aren't being treated well.
Mm.
What about what's going on with your profitability, right? How's that been impacted?
Mm.
So there are objective ways of seeing what those impacts are. And, stress is a big deal.
Mm.
But the worst thing you could do is stress over something that you don't need to. So if you don't have those objective measurements of what's going on, dentists in general, from a disc perspective, most dentists are SCs, right? So their ability to catastrophize is significant.
Worry. Yes.
But that's it. And that's it. It's,
Yep.
it's
It's
not,
interesting.
it may or may not be realistic. So we spoke about Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah. Talk about catastrophizing.
Oh, well, okay. So, my son is a banker. He's the chief lending officer for a publicly traded bank.
Mm.
Um, and we spoke about it all this weekend
Mm.
because, yes, he was catastrophizing.
Mm.
He told me, and you'll read it, told me over the weekend, I didn't know it, that Signature Bank, very large bank in New York, was shut down.
Mm.
And he is very concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And dentists may look at that and say, is that going to impact me?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that market volatility is often a function of psychology and not financial reality.
Yes, I have the money, but I'm choosing to spend it because I'm worried. Yeah.
And I think some of what we're experiencing has been the effect of having a fairly prolonged period of growth and low interest rates. So our national credit is in crisis.
Mm.
So not just nationally, but individual credit. So
Yeah.
credit card debt is at an all-time high.
Yeah. You have to look at why are banks closing? Why are they folding?
So my son explained it to me.
Mm.
So he said, at any given time, banks are somewhere on a sort of cycle because rates vary. And if you look at a specific time, if the rates have dipped down, so they're not getting return on their money as they had, but things will change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if you capture them at
The wrong
low
time.
point,
Yeah.
you can say, oh my God, they're insolvent. And that's part of the whole FDIC system, is to compensate for that.
Yeah, for those times.
Don't worry, we understand that there are these fluctuations,
Mm-hmm.
but the public should feel secure
Mm-hmm.
that, FDIC limit in savings and $250,000.
250? Yeah, 250,000. Yeah.
$250,000. Which is important to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's what prevents the bank run from happening. I think that's what happened in California was a good old fashioned bank run. Just go get your money. Everybody takes their money out and you're already down at that low point. It'll just finish you off.
Right.
Yeah. People aren't paying their debt, which means they're not paying the interest. And then people take their money out. You don't have money to buy time. Seems like that's what's happening. I had a client say that somebody they know just didn't get their paycheck yet because they banked through one of these banks. My response was, well, they're FDIC insured. They're going to have their money. They just need to switch over their payroll to another bank, get their money. But that's just going to take time now. And is that going to create panic in the consumer to say, I'm not going to go buy X. Historically, what we've seen is other areas of spending money get set aside before healthcare. Healthcare has a tendency for people to say, if I really value who I am, I'm going to take care of myself and I'm not going to go on vacation.
So that I think was true.
Mm-hmm. From 2008, 2010, we saw this problem that we didn't see in dentistry. And then all of a sudden, wham, it hit dentistry pretty hard.
Not only that, but I think for millennials,
Mm-hmm.
that's not true.
Because they want to enjoy life. Yes, I know. It's like, especially when I was given a bunch of free money, I'm going to go buy a TV with it. When I got my free check, whatever it was, I'm going to go on vacation now. Yeah.
Well, my concern is, I lived through 2007, 2010, and my practice did not take a hit, but I had a partner whose practice dropped by 25%. I mean, it ultimately led to the dissolution of a partnership.
Wow.
But and the reason was a different focus.
Mm-hmm.
So my focus was always on health,
mm-hmm.
and his focus was on cosmetics.
I was just going to say, you're going to say something very narrow-minded that people don't really need that much of. Yeah.
Right. So yes, they want it,
mm-hmm.
but when
there's an option, I got this money to pay for this or this money to pay for that, what's it going to be? Yeah. I saw the same thing. I mean, we had so many spa practices, paraffin wax and the hot towels. And I mean, we were coaching all of that. It was a great idea. And then the problem was they got so focused on that high end, big cases only, cosmetic cases only, that it created there wasn't that enough of that to go around at the end of the day. And the practices that were more generalized, to be honest, full service practice, they could have that full mouth specialty to it. They could do cosmetics, but they had a wide array of services. Those are practices that only, maybe they went down 5% in the worst moments, but they weren't having catastrophic hits.
So we've had this conversation before about my philosophy when it comes to hygiene.
Mm.
So I'm sure your experience is similar. I'd say most of our general practice clients, their process is patients come in and they see the hygienist.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not what my process was.
Mm-hmm.
My process is you come in and you see me.
The relationship.
I want to be the foundation of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, and again, sometimes it depends on the skill set of the practitioner. So I'm a good communicator.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I want to communicate the value of hygiene. I want to support the hygienist. I want to lend my authority
mm-hmm.
to the hygienist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why my hygiene efficiency was the highest in Manhattan, according to Dentrix. So I had a hygiene efficiency of 84%.
What do you mean by that? Break that down for everybody. Hygiene efficient, meaning compliance?
Compliance.
Mm-hmm.
The number of patients who come back.
Mm-hmm.
So active patients
mm-hmm.
and number of hygiene visits. Right?
Got it.
So
1,000 active patients, 840 had an appointment.
What percentage of your patients
have an appointment? In hygiene. Yeah. Gotcha. Hygiene. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Active patients is such a misnomer.
Yeah. Right.
It's a made up number. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but hygiene efficiency is huge. Mm-hmm. So I asked, I didn't even know that number. So, my rep came in and said, hey, we can run an analysis on your practice through Dentrix. I said, what's it going to cost me? He says, it costs you nothing. Yeah. I said, hey, do it.
Free? Go for it.
Yeah. And even if it wasn't, I would have paid a couple of $100,000 for it. So anyway, he comes back with the number. I said, okay, what does it mean? He said, it means you're the best in New York. I said, what do you mean the best? He said, the average is less than 60.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, what should it be? He said, we like to see a benchmark somewhere around 75.
Hmm.
I mean, it's like case acceptance. So Jarvis Analytics comes out every year with the state of dentistry. They just came out with another one. And it actually went up. So case acceptance rate, right? Benchmark, 65%. Actual, 40%.
Yeah.
Like
Man.
40%. That means 60% of people who come in don't get what they need.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's terrible.
Yeah. And just for those listening, we track two things: number of people and dollars presented. So we want 80% of the people scheduling something. That's that, like you were talking about 84% in hygiene. We want 80% of them enrolled in care. And we want them at least scheduling 60% of the dollars we present. More than that, obviously, would be great. We want as much of that, get them as healthy as possible, as quick as possible. But you'd be surprised how many times we ask people, how's your case acceptance? Oh, it's good. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I'm hitting my goal. And then you do this, you look at, well, your effective rate at doing this is low, but you have enough patients to cushion the blow.
Right. And that's great when the economics,
The economy's good.
is good.
Now you got to become really efficient and effective.
2007, 2010 come along,
Yeah.
boom,
Yeah.
problem. So you don't want to be successful despite yourself.
Yeah.
You want to be successful intentionally. And that intentionality is oftentimes missing.
Well, and it takes constant improvement. You have to be looking for ways to make yourself better, your team better. It takes training, and it takes a willingness. I just heard yesterday that when you play defense, when you're very defensive, it's a sign of selfishness. And I, took a step back and went, wait, what? And what he was saying was, when you defend your position too much, you're just worried about how you look. You're just worried about what people are gonna think about you. Instead of saying, you know what, there's opportunities for me to grow and learn. I want to learn more. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And we got to be willing to reach out and figure out what works, what won't work, and be ready, like you said, with those foundational things. I maybe 1 out of every 3 calls now lately with clients is, have you been looking at your culture commandments? Have you been going back and look at your culture elements and figuring out, is my team on the same page? Do they really understand who we are and what we're about? Because we're getting pulled away. We're getting distracted with other things, and things are becoming a problematic, burnout, and all those things we mentioned earlier. So
Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning is a great book. And I think he says something, he was a psychiatrist that went through the Holocaust. And brilliant book. And he says something there really towards this, what you were saying about culture and purpose. People, I'm paraphrasing it, people who lose their meaning in life and their purpose will oftentimes try to substitute that with some form of abuse. They'll replace it something else, and that something else may be alcohol, maybe drugs, maybe sex, maybe something else to make up, maybe eating, right? So they're replacing their purpose, their drive towards something with something else. So, big hot topic is, mental health is a big deal.
Yeah.
And burnout's real. If it, it was probably a little amplified during COVID.
Yeah. Right after. Yeah.
Should there be a significant economic downturn, and no one knows, because some of it is out of everybody's control. I mean, if China goes and invades Taiwan, all bets are off, right? We have
Mm-hmm.
no idea what that's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you can't totally predict. You have to you have to be able, it's a skill set, to embrace the suck.
I was wondering where you're going to go with it. Embrace.
So
There.
that is a book.
Yeah.
Some Navy SEAL.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Embrace the suck.
Really? Yeah. I mean, there's going to be downturns. There's no just success. There's success and failure intertwined, and you have to be willing to be prepared for challenges and the pitfalls that are going to come. I saw this picture. It was my plan, and it was just a straight line, and then there was the reward at the end, and it said God's plan, and it was, pitfall and staggered and mountains to climb and all of these things. And, the question becomes, are you preparing yourself to deal with those things, anticipating them, not out of fear, not out of worry, but out of business savvy, from an entrepreneurial, from a leadership standpoint. And nobody knows all the answers to that, but you got to be in search and pursuing, and what can we do differently here, and asking the right questions to the right people.
So, I love biblical references. So, God took the Jews out of Egypt, and he could have sent them right away to the promised land,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But they weren't ready.
Yeah.
They needed to be their culture, their attitudes needed to be molded. And at some point, he needed a new generation.
And then even warn that second generation, hey, here's what happened before. This is why I'm reminding you again before you go in there. And I think that was Moses. But the thing that really rings true in what you're saying, and we'll wrap up with this, is to be at that level where you want to be, you'll have to be a different person than who you are now, which means, how do you learn to become that person? I think there's educational part of that, but so much of that is experience, and you can't make it up there without having gone through the things down here.
Not only that, but oftentimes it's really hard to see those things in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the value of a coach. And it's the reason that every successful athlete has a coach.
Yeah.
They can't see their own flaws. So if what got you here won't get you there,
Yeah.
how do you do that? It's great. Read the books, watch the TED Talks,
Yeah.
watch our webinars,
Yeah.
do all those things.
Yeah.
But there's no better way of doing it. I mean, I had a coach. I mean,
I have several.
yeah. It just, you can't, we all have blind spots.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our biggest blind spots are on our own faults.
Yeah. I can't think of the name of the consulting agency that did the study, but they basically looked at improvement and what gives you the greatest chance of improvement. And it was reading a book, 11%, visual and audio learning, right? Maybe a seminar, PowerPoint, things like this, what we're doing, 25%. This is implementation for improvement. And the only thing that gave you a shot at actually getting to 100% chance for improvement and implementation was one-on-one mentoring, where you're getting all of that. You're getting the knowledge, you're getting the visual, you're getting the hands-on, you're getting the feedback, you're getting repetition, you get to do over and over again. And I think that's a good representation of what coaching is.
And, in dentistry, it's really challenging because I've had the benefit of being able to pull back the curtains on some of the gurus. So you hear these gurus say all of these things. And when you pull back the curtains, it's like the Wizard of Oz. Don't look at that guy. Because
don't look at my practice.
Right. So it's sort of they're baiting you for doing some of these things that in reality they haven't been able to implement in their own practice.
And so is it a fair comparison for you to feel bad about yourself when you're not doing that? Yeah. Get it?
Yep.
Okay. So just to summarize, you gave us 3 healthy foundation systems that have to be in place if we're going to make it through any sort of challenges and tough times, whatever may come, whether it's burnout or etc. You said you got to have the right people. You love to talk about the COO, a lead person. You can work on your leadership as you as an individual. You got to have talent on your team. You got to have systems in place. We love systems, whether it's verbal skill systems or systems in place for how to set up a room, a procedure manual, whatever it is. Systems have to be there as a guide. And then lastly, culture, the interface between systems and people. Those two things add up to culture. And many people just don't know what that's supposed to be. And they need clarity on that.
And that's where coaching, modeling, mentoring, whatever you want to call that, is really helpful.
Yeah. It's another foundational piece, right?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to put it on here. Coaching. All right. Awesome. If it's in there, it means it's facts.
If it's written, it must be true.
Yes. Awesome. Awesome. So thank you so much, Dr. Goldberg. It's so always good to meet once a month and do our coaching session. I know people out there are getting good from it because I get good feedback and people messaging saying they like this, they like that. So we'll keep masterminding. Let's see, this is March. We have our May 19th and 20th event in Florida for people that want to join at allstardentalacademy.com. You can reach out as well. You have anything coming up? You're looking forward to
May 19th, unfortunately, May 19th at the American Academy of Dental Sleep Medicine. The day before, we're doing our Spencer Study Club Live. And I'm working on a workshop from Hello to Hugs.
Nice. Oh, that'll be cool. Taking the book and putting it into a 2-day workshop?
We're going to try to do it in 2 hours.
Oh, okay. Hey, power pack, drinking from a fire hydrant. It's always good. Yes. I'm teaching a 1-day, May 18th, right before our program. You mentioned the day before the program. I'm doing a Speak Like an All-Star. So we have, I think we have 16 room for 20 people in this speaking skills training. So it's really important for leaders, doctors to know how to communicate, and not just to give a speech, but how do I communicate clearly and effectively? So I'm really excited for that one. So that one's also on the docket. So, all right, awesome. Well, that's it for today's Fireside Chat. We'll see you guys in April.